Hey everyone! For this video, we set out to tackle our Challenger Earpiece series for the jungle. For anyone who doesn't know, the series aims to see if a Challenger player can carry a game just by being in the ear of an average player as they play the game themselves. The idea is that, with this series, you'll learn the ins and outs of how to actually apply Challenger knowledge in your own games. Now, when we set out to make this video, we thought it would be extremely successful. Jungle is a role all about decision making, so with a Challenger player to make your decisions, you'll just win, right? He'll tell you where to gank, when to farm, how to path, etc. All of your problems will be solved. But that's not quite what happened. We learned something very interesting as our average player actually lost multiple games in a row with a Challenger Earpiece. What we learned is that not even a Challenger player can make great decisions in Gold Elo with the amount of information an average player gathers throughout the game. And this was really interesting. The whole time the games were going on, the Challenger was constantly wanting more and more and more information, as you can hear here.
And you're just looking to catch back up doing the full clear.
Yep.
In between your camps, look at the lanes, so you can see what's happening if anybody's fighting using sums. Come from behind, you're a bit low here, so just wait in the tri-bush. Look at the lane. You can react to this, it should be fine. You have shield and flash. Just keep looking at the lane as you run. Look at the wave, see how big it is.
Not very.
Look mid. Look at his HP, oh he just went in the fog.
So, if a Challenger player with Challenger level decision making can't make great decisions with gold amounts of information, how are you supposed to? For this reason, we're going to swap it up for this video, and instead of analyzing the games that were played like we had planned, we're going to completely focus on how you can start to gather more, higher quality information. This will allow you to actually make good decisions. You'll be able to predict what's going to happen, get to plays earlier, know when a play isn't worth trying, and so much more. The value you'll gain from mastering the skill is absolutely massive. So, to start, we want to really highlight for you just how insanely different the amount of information held by a Challenger and Gold player is. This footage is from our Challenger Earpiece games that we did, and you'll notice that while going from Raptors, to Wolves, to Blue, to an unlucky Gromp reset, Olaf took the camera off himself only once to check bot lane after they died. Moments later, we see Olaf doing Scuttle, running into Raptors, and moving up near top where he wants to gank, but his camera didn't leave himself once. Now, let's compare that to what we saw from the same Challenger coach in his own games. It's just a little bit different. We're speeding this up so you don't have to watch the whole thing, but during this blue, Gromp, red, Krugs clear, he looks away from himself or to a new lane a grand total of 24 times. What an absolutely insane difference from what we saw earlier from our Gold player. To accomplish this massive amount of information gathering, he is predominantly utilizing F keys, which is maybe something that seems a bit intimidating for average players, but it's actually incredibly intuitive and easy to use. First off, we can't really recommend actually using the default F key keybinds as they are quite far away and awkward to use for most of us. We suggest using other, closer, more comfortable binds, or ideally, mouse buttons. We think these will interfere with your play the least, so if your mouse has a few buttons, this is a great way to use them. Also, I kind of hate having a lot of binds, so you'll notice I just use one for bot lane. This isn't perfect, but for me, it's a lot easier and gets the job done. Also, notice that you don't need a bind for yourself, obviously, since you can just use space for that. So, I'm able to use F keys well, simply adding 3 binds on my mouse, which is a pretty small and simple adjustment that provides massive amounts of information in-game. Also, the ally number is simply based on their position on the scoreboard. So here, Mundo is ally number 1, Brand number 2, and so on. This is nice to be aware of if your team lane swaps at all, so you can just quickly adjust your scoreboard so the same hotkey is always looking at the same lane. Since you can't try this out in the practice tool with no teammates, you can load up a custom game with AI teammates to test it out and get comfortable. Okay, now that we understand how you can easily set up and very intuitively benefit from F keys, I also want to quickly point out that just randomly spamming those isn't going to suddenly make you way better at the game. It's important that you know both where to look and what you're looking for. First off, you want to be primarily looking at lanes near you that you could actually react to. Notice in this clip from earlier that while our Challenger coach is clearing his Gromp, he's spam looking top. While he's clearing Krugs, he's looking bot. This is a nice general rule that you can follow that will make you much quicker reacting to plays nearby. But sometimes you will absolutely want to check in on lanes that aren't close to you, either because you're headed there or because you see action occurring on the minimap. First, let's say that a Fiddle is starting a second clear, planning on just full clearing down to Gromp towards his Crows. If bot lane is a super gankable lane, he'll want to be keeping an eye on that the whole time so that he's super informed on what's happening there. This doesn't mean that Fiddle should ignore looking at his top and mid lanes, just that he can be checking bot more than he normally would since he's planning on going there. Next up, our second trigger for checking a lane, no matter how far away it is seeing minimap action. For example, in this clip, here we can clearly see, just on our minimap, that Pantheon has jumped onto Ashe, right? This would be a great time to look bot no matter where you are in the map to see both who comes out on top, as well as any summoner spells that are used, which we'll touch on a bit later. In this clip, our challenger player actually uses the same idea to pick up a kill top lane. As he's walking away, he sees on the minimap Wukong go in and looks instantly, responding right away for a kill. Now obviously Lee was nearby this lane and should be watching it anyway, but the idea is that you should always check fights you see on the minimap. Beyond just looking at lanes around the map, you'll pretty much always want to immediately look at the jungler at any time you can. In this clip from earlier, Echo appears on the minimap briefly and our challenger really wanted Zaylor to look at him, but he was too slow. This is actually a pretty significant mistake that makes your decision making way more difficult. Seeing which buffs the enemy jungler has can open up counter jungling, or simply seeing their health can either encourage or completely dissuade a play. It's really essential information. And we can see in a clip from another Lee Sin game from our challenger that he does indeed look to Nidalee when she shows, seeing her full on HP and with a blue buff. This lets him know that her red is still up, and since he's a level up and has warrior completed already, he can invade her there with prio in both mid and top. Okay, jumping back to watching lanes, we now have a decent idea of where we want to be looking. So let's now talk about what you should be seeing when you do look. And we recommend watching for 5 main things: health, mana, summoner spell usage, the wave, and posturing. There are some other small things, but let's focus on these today. Health and mana are pretty self-explanatory. These are fundamental pieces of information that are valuable when seeing how a lane is going and if it's gankable, etc. Summoner spells are another great thing to see when you're checking a lane, which is why we want to look at lanes that we see fighting on the minimap, right? Especially in low elo, your teammates are unlikely to ping those for you, so tracking yourself as much as possible is essential. If you're new to tracking summoner spells or it seems super overwhelming because you've seen pros copy-paste spamming a slew of timers, just start by tracking one opponent's flash and build up from there. Try to make it an immobile enemy that you can really abuse while their flash is down. So let's say there's a fight bot lane at 8 minutes and the enemy Kassadin TP's in and both he and Aphelios flash during the fight. Just go ahead and track Aphelios's since that's all of his movement, whereas Kassadin has a bunch more. To make this as easy as possible, be sure to have timestamps on in chat and just ping the ability when it's used. Then, next time you're recalling or running from base, just check the timestamp and type the timer in chat, plus 5 minutes for flash. And that will help you remember it really well without hardly interrupting your routine at all. In this clip, our gold player got a flash topside in a successful gank. Later, he pings the flash in chat, but doesn't type it out, and when asked about it later, had no idea what the timer on the flash was and struggled to find it in chat. Typing will really help you and your team remember. Alright, next up we have looking at the wave. When we mentioned this to our gold player, he communicated that counting out minions to see where a wave was heading was just too much to manage, and we get that. If that's the case for you, just check for big, obvious wave advantages on either side. If you see your lanes building up a huge wave that would crash, that's a great time to consider a dive. Alternatively, if you see one of your lanes facing a large wave, it could be a great time to hover them and keep them safe. And finally, you want to look at what we'll be calling posture, which is basically just in-game body language. Do they look ready to fight at any second? Is anyone playing super far up? Are they backing off at the slightest move? These things can give you an idea of how soon a fight may or may not break out, though it is imperfect information as some players will use posture to mind game, so take it with a grain of salt. Okay, now the last thing that I want to quickly touch on in this video about gathering information from the jungle is your camera position. This is where we say that locked camera is really bad. Sorry for the 12 of you that still play unlocked. But even if you don't, there's a decent chance that your camera placement isn't perfect, so let's check it out. In this example, notice how pretty much the whole time Lee is approaching this gank, he's just watching top. But also, here he has himself down in the corner so that he can see the whole situation. This lets him know exactly what's going on, how close he is, when he can queue, etc. Once again, here notice his camera positioning as he moves top. And here, after a little scrap mid, notice how his camera is over to the side so that he can see the ramp as he does scuttle. He's watching for Nidalee. This is a good reason to not only review your replays in the client, but to actually record yourself playing sometimes and review that as well. You might be surprised how poor your camera positioning is. This is also a great way to check if you're looking at your lanes often enough so you can double up on topics from this video. Alright, and that does it for our video on gathering info as a jungler. Now, obviously gathering information is only step one. You then need to know how to interpret that information and make decisions around it. But at least now you'll have a fighting chance and you'll be able to learn from your mistakes when you make them. We were really stunned by just how handicapped a challenger player felt without all the information they usually have. So we really do encourage you all to start upping your game in this area. It's absolutely essential. By the way, we released some crazy guides over at Skillcapped, which are exclusive only to our subscribers. We have over 800 guides covering everything you need to know to rapidly improve. We also send our challengers into Elo Hell every week to see how they climb out of the most extreme scenarios with the worst teammates imaginable. All wrapped up into courses that you can watch right away. Oh, and if you don't significantly improve while using Skillcapped, you get a full refund. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up today and escape Elo Hell. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.